everyone should invest in time-lapse, whether or not they believe in morphokinetics or not. So my name's Whitney. I'm the lab manager at the Evewell clinic, where we have 2 fertility and gynecology clinics in London. I've been an embryologist for just over 20 years, and I've become very recently heavily involved in providing education and support for patients through a variety of platforms such as podcasts and Instagram. This is a topic I'm exceptionally passionate about, and so I apologise in advance for my over-enthusiasm. I hope you will find it valuable and adaptable into your own teams after you return back to the workplace. Firstly, a massive thank you to Genea for inviting me to talk yesterday, and huge apologies for the fact that I didn't know what day it was, but in true Emma style, I just couldn't work out the days of the week. I did promise that when I got the microphone I would burst into a Tina Turner song, but as there's quite a few of you here, I don't think I will do that to you. Maybe later. Anyone take me out for a drink, I'll do it later. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? By the end of this brief talk, I'm hopeful that you will be able to describe the 3 main benefits of time-lapse for your patients and your staff. You'll be able to draw a comparison to your current work setup and ours, and hopefully see the benefits for what I propose. And I hopefully will be able to show you that you can apply these benefits immediately just by adding time-lapse to your current system. 3 key benefits for me are firstly how time-lapse technology helps us understand different patients' patterns of embryo development. The morphokinetics really do help your clinicians understand after a failed cycle of what has potentially gone wrong. It also helps with your embryologists in their ability to pick embryos where there are multiple embryos by being able to see true division patterns of the embryos. Secondly, I am going to show you how watching your embryos can lead to you having more viable embryos available for your patients to use. And thirdly, and the big one for me, I think you can support your embryology team by being able to adapt their working patterns, afford them more flexibility, and how you can actually grow your business constricted by space. You'll be able to compare your own current working patterns to the one I'm very tentatively going to put before you today. It's a leap of faith. You'll have to trust me, it works in a busy IVF unit. You're also going to be able to apply those benefits of having embryos cultured. Once you can see how it gives you more embryos to work with and how you can counsel your patients better, there really is no going back. So now, because I don't like doing things in order, I mean I couldn't even turn up on the right day, we're going to do things in reverse, so I'm going to save the best till last. So applying the benefits of time-lapse immediately. By watching your embryos develop, you really do see the embryos growing. You can see the different division patterns, and I think a really good example of this is embryos that do a direct multipolar cleavage at the first cell stage, so a direct 1 to 3, are related to 95% of embryonic demise, and they do not grow in culture. So if you are working in a day 3 transfer situation, you really need to know that they've done that on their first cleavage division so that you don't end up putting the wrong embryo back. The time-lapse alone also instantly makes it completely unnecessary to be removing dishes, thus removing risk from those dishes being out of the incubator for any more than they need to. And this for me is, I'm not going to focus so much on the morphokinetics. I think it's been done to death, and I think that you're either on board or you're not, and we are where we are. I'm a big believer in the morphokinetics of embryos, but what I will absolutely show you here is that this is from Evewell numbers that I am plugging through. I am going to try and get this out and put this in a paper. As many as 3% of your ICSI embryos go into syngamy before 18 hours. 3%. And actually from that picture you can see that is fertilised. That looks like an unfertilised egg. If you get to your embryos at that stage, they are discarded. They are not utilised, they are perfectly fertilised, but you're missing it. And you're missing it because it's not behaving like a textbook says it should. That's 3 in 100 embryos, 30 in 1,000, and 300 in 10,000 embryos. And in a clinic doing 1,500 cycles, there's a real possibility that you are discarding really viable embryos, and a good number of them. If I then go on to tell you that the very, very early work I've done on this, on the ones that go into early syngamy that then go on to make blastocysts, over 60% of them are euploid. So you're not just discarding embryos, you're potentially discarding the patient's best embryos. Okay, on to my favourite bit. You can have the best clinic, you can have the best clinicians, you can have the best consultants, you can have the best nurses. You can be in the biggest and the best buildings, and you can invest in the best equipment, and even your patient cohort can be fantastic. But if your embryology team do not function well, then no matter how good you do everything else, the outcomes will never come. If we look at this really crude diagram, what I'm trying to represent is the impact that your many teams have on most parts of your patient journey. From initial consult to your treatment planning to your stimulation phase, there are multiple people and multiple voices involved in that process that allows a little bit of rescue, a little bit of safety. You've got people to lean on. But at the top, there is only one. Your embryology team are solely responsible after the egg collection is done for freezing the gametes and creating the embryos that your clinic's success depends upon. It is their skill and hard work and dedication to the patient's treatment that make or break these outcomes for your clinic. Now, a lot of this comes down to really good recruitment, really good training, really good SOPs, yes, but it's the well-being of that team that needs to be protected. And I'm not saying that that's more important than other teams. On the contrary, if you want to take anything away from this talk, mental health is what I want you to take away, protecting your team like you protect your patients. But I'm an embryologist, so I'm going to talk about embryology. They are your most valuable and expensive business resource. By providing them with the best equipment and technology, you can enable them the much needed flexibility that some of your other teams get, and they don't become overstretched. Your results will be better. I'm sorry, did I say resource? I meant humans. Embryologists are humans. They have goals, they have dreams, they have families, they have hobbies. And most of the time, they are in a dark laboratory under some of the most highly stressed situations possible. How we support them and give them the flexibility will ultimately result in a level of staff retention that you can achieve. We spend so long training these individuals, we don't want them to leave. But how? So here's the proposal, here's the leap of faith. This is what we do at the Evewell, and I can only tell you it works beautifully. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's taught us that anything is possible. The unthinkable happened, yet we all adapted. Companies work remotely for the best part of 2 years, and now there is a far more balanced working pattern for many people in all walks of life. They are a bit in, they are a bit out. Their life is more balanced. We can only adapt if we have the ability to be adaptable and if we plan for all eventualities. And we can only adapt if we've got the right equipment to help us do that. In the majority of places that I've ever worked, the embryology team are in all of the time. They have to be, right, to deal with embryos? Not so much. What I strongly believe is that if you create a rota that prevents failure from things being missed, everyone has autonomy and accountability. You can actually make sure everything's checked off, nothing is missed. But do you really physically need to be present all of the time to facilitate this way of thinking? And the answer is no. Whether you're in a small team or a large team, having the whole team in all of the time presents so many issues. One of the big ones is space. So here is how our laboratory works. We have the in. Lab 1, Lab 2, sperm and float are in. That means they're in the building. Your embryo person on the embryo rota, funnily enough, ironically, doesn't touch an embryo all day because they're not even in the building. They work remotely. They are with good time lapse. They are grading your embryos. They are making your patient calls. They are uploading PGT results. They're supporting your patients through the journey, and actually they are the conductor in the orchestra of what is going on in your lab all day. By using Teams and time lapse, we can talk to each other, and actually what you're enabling to do is giving your team the flexibility to have a remote working and a better work-life balance. The in-team have their responsibilities, and we mix up who's in and who's out. And obviously, if we're short-staffed, the out person comes in, but it's about having the flexibility in your system to afford this. The embryo person takes away the distractions. They take away the need for anyone in the lab to move away from what they're doing. When you're in the lab, you're in the lab, you're focused on the lab work, you're focused on the patient's gametes. The embryo person takes it all away, takes away all the stress, takes away all the calls, all the breakup in the day. They upload everything to your EMR, and they answer all the emails and the urgent queries coming in. The benefits to your staff are by no means huge. I'm from London. The cost of living is, as it is everywhere, extortionate. The cost of living, no travelling. You've reduced their expenses already. The lack of hours in the day, they're not travelling, so that you're giving them some hours back. The time with your family, they're not travelling. And in London, most people that I work with commute for an hour, hour and a half each way, so that's potentially 3 hours gone in the day. The autonomy and trust of developing and encourage self-thought and career progression. The flexibility in your system to be helpful when you can't prepare for it, i.e., especially if you're from London, train strikes, teacher strikes, sick kids. By having this as an option, it enables you to negotiate your way around the stuff we can't always plan for. The other benefits that I touched on briefly, I work in a building in Harley Street, we ain't going to get any bigger. So we can't add more desks, we can't have more room. But that doesn't mean we can't get busier, because if you're clever about the way you work, you can get busier. You just put a lot of it out remotely. The urgency, somebody always needs something now, and they're in the middle of an ICSI or a biopsy. You've got someone that they can refer to. They may not be on site, they don't need to be. And the weekend work. Your staff need time out. If there's no in work, why do they need to come in? So, why the jury? None of any of what I've just said can be done without really, really good time lapse. And what I mean by really good time lapse is the images that you need to make sure that the grading can be done effectively, that you can remote in on a secure platform and know that your patients, all the GDPR is being kept safe. The Jerry Connect is a really secure place where the live visuals go. You can access it remotely. It's seamless. You can do everything you need to do very, very, as much as you were in front of the incubator. The incubator itself is a great design. It enables us to, it's modular, so if something goes wrong in one chamber, it doesn't need to affect the entire incubator. Again, I work in a small lab. I can't afford to have a whole incubator going down just because one part of it doesn't work. You can actually just switch off one part and allow the other 5 chambers to continue. And the Jerry Status Hubs as a lab manager saves me from sleepless nights. If the alarms go off for whatever reason, I can literally remote in and see exactly what's wrong, if it's wrong, and actually if anyone needs to attend. Because I can see all the gas, I can see the temperatures, I can see everything. And the customer service is pretty epic too. So the conclusion from me, time-lapse will give you more embryos. It will. And I'm going to try and get those numbers out because they're pretty massive. Time-lapse will give you more understanding of how to help your patients. But more importantly, let's start treating our staff like our patients. They're humans, and they deserve as much flexibility and a better work-life balance. They are the reason your business will work or not. But to do all of this, it has to be good time-lapse, and for me, it has to be the Jerry.